So, yeah, bonjour and good morning from my side, and welcome to my talk. I am honored and excited to share with you thoughts on how to improve river science to advance ecosystem restoration and management in the 21st century. So as you have heard, my name is Daniel Haste. Just to give you a short background of myself, I got hooked to freshwater ecosystems as an early teenager through an unsuccessful fishing experience. And from that point on, my passion for streams and lakes and my interest for aquatic organisms led me to study applied limnology in Vienna, Austria. Both during and after my studies, I gained experience working with private companies, the public sector, as well as non-governmental organizations. And then some years after my graduation, I began to pursue a PhD in river management and restoration at the University of Lisbon in Portugal. And there my thesis work focused on studying flow ecology relationships with regards to modified river flows in order to enhance the environmental state of rivers subjected to both water abstraction and hydropeaking. And also during my PhD years, I had the privilege to work on some other topics such as biodiversity and microbial pollution in East Africa. And now after defending my thesis, I now continue to work in the field of ecohydrology and river management at the Institute of Hydrobiology and Aquatic Ecosystem Management at Portugal University in Vienna. So in my talk, I would like to cover three main topics. First, I want to address the need to advance inter- and transdisciplinary research. Secondly, I will talk about the need to transfer scientific knowledge outside of the academic bubble. And then finally, I want to talk about the urgency for stakeholder engagement. So coming to the first point, if we look at the energy system and the goal to decarbonize the economy, we realize that the run towards renewable energy sources, which include wind, solar, and hydropower, creates a seemingly contradiction between the goals of nature protection, for example, the Water Framework Directive in Europe, and those of energy production, such as the Renewable Energy Directive. And most of us are probably aware that hydropower plays a crucial role in these energy transitions, as it is a rather reliable energy source and one of the few renewable sources that can actually effectively store electricity under current conditions, as well as balance variations caused by photovoltaics and wind production with electricity demand. And therefore basically shown that these numbers, as an example from Austria, this increase in solar and wind energies is also projected to increase hydropower plants, and particular, in this case, pump storage hydropower plants. But although renewable, we know that hydropower can cause significant impacts on freshwater ecosystems, and many of these which are already heavily degraded. Therefore, in addition to these current threats that hydropower causes on river ecosystems, new hydropower, shown here in this map in yellow and red, will inevitably lead to increased pressures. And considering that actually many new projects are planned in sensitive areas, it is urgent to develop strategic tools for balancing hydropower development and conservation needs. And one of such strategic tools or planning approaches is the so-called HYCON, Hydropower Conservation Tool. And this tool integrates the energy economic characteristics of planned hydropower plants and conservation needs of ecological sensitive river stretches. And Karina Selinger and colleagues analyzed over 100 planned hydropower plants in Austria with this tool, and they identified hydropower plants with high economic attractiveness and low conservation needs, or low conservation concerns for that matter. But considering that in Austria, we already have a high degree of hydropower exploitation, and so the results reveal that actually just a minor number of projects are without conservation conflicts. And overall, basically upgrading existing hydropower plants was associated with least ecological impact. And in summary, this HYCON approach represents a strategic instrument that can help decision makers to govern the implementation of the Renewable Energy Directive and the Water Framework Directive in a transparent way, as well as to pinpoint the limitations of future hydropower development and to avoid conflicts as well as stranded investments. But however, not only is hydropower known to impact ecosystems. Actually, in a similar way, wind farms may impact terrestrial ecosystems, and both solar and wind plants compete with other land users. Also, renewable electricity production and demand are often dislocated, and that makes it necessary to upgrade or expand transmission lines, which can cause further societal issues. And therefore, these issues related to energy transition go actually beyond the power struggle between hydropower and conservation alone. And in order to achieve this sustainable energy transition towards a low carbon future, I think it is urgent to integrate previously separated disciplines, perspective, and system components, as illustrated here by this graph. In this regard, energy planning decisions require that diverse ecological, social, technical, and economic aspects are balanced across space and time. And even though the importance of this transdisciplinary link has been recognized, it remains one of the current key challenges in the transition towards renewable energy sources. And therefore, this integration of these ecological, technical, economic, and social components constitutes a key pillar in the sustainable energy transition. And all of these aspects shown here together result in a complex trade-off between different uses, goals, and benefits within the policy nexus for sustainable societies. And in this regard, the future energy system must minimize socio-ecological impacts and at the same time provide the required electrical energy at the right time and place in a reliable manner. And such an ideal system will be a Pareto optimal system, meaning that each of these three conditions cannot be further improved without the degradation of another. Coming to my second point, which is communication, I would like to showcase difficulties and obstacles for implementing environmental flows. And if asked what the main challenges are, many of us, including myself, would say that we need to get more data, we need to do more science and write up more reports. Obviously, this is not to be neglected, but there's also another factor that plays an even bigger role. And shown here in this survey, we can see that people need to and want to understand the socioeconomic costs and benefits related to certain decision with regards to environmental flows allocation, and we could say water resources management more generally. And therefore, my second point is that communication is key. In order to enhance understanding of costs and benefits of different decisions, be it related to socioeconomics or biodiversity conservation, we scientists must learn to better communicate our results to decision makers and the wider public. Because publishing a scientific paper is actually just the beginning of the communications process. In the following steps, the science needs to be transferred and translated outside of the academic bubble. And there are different ways to do so. And as an example, I'd like to show you one that I am currently experimenting with. In 2019, my colleagues and I published a paper where we compared two methods for fish stock assessment: backpack electrofishing versus daytime snorkeling. And we found that both methods actually yielded comparable results in clear water trout streams. And this result underlined the feasibility of actually using this daytime snorkeling method to conduct regular stock assessments of fish. And thereby, basically, by doing this comparison, we actually offer an easy to use and cost-efficient method to fisheries managers and angling clubs, and thereby enable data-based decision-making because they can go out on a regular year-to-year basis and see how their stocks are reacting. The years after this publication, I wrote up some articles for English and a German-speaking fishing magazine, as well as shared the news via social media. And this German magazine has a print run of 20,000 copies and is distributed in Germany and Austria. So I hope that this will encourage one or the other person to use the snorkeling method to improve fish stock management decisions. Coming to my third point, stakeholder engagement. We've seen communication is one thing, but actually getting the stakeholders active in the process is another one. And earlier I showed in the graph on the difficulties of eFlow's implementation, we actually the fourth obstacle in the list was effective stakeholder involvement. And stakeholder involvement is something that is more and more practiced in Austria as an example. And the goal is to establish consensus ideas on best ways to move forward regarding river management. And shown here in these pictures are impressions of a workshop for common pathways in river restoration from Vienna from 2016. And in this workshop, which was the first of its kind, more than 50 stakeholders came together to sit at a table and discuss rivers. And people's backgrounds ranged from hydropower to science to fisheries, engineering, and many others. And they came together and talked about how or established a common vision for the future rivers of Austria. But similarly, one of the key take-home messages of the 2019 Environmental Flows workshop of the EU-India Water Platform, as shown here in these pictures, was that stakeholder processes are necessary to move this environmental flows debate from assessment to implementation. And this key message was that actually stakeholders need to agree upon this desired state of the river and set conservation and management objectives, as well as water allocation priorities. And through such means, stakeholders should take ownership of the process and thereby ensure that common goals are met. But also looking back at Europe, it's clear that the greater public will actually be more likely to raise their voice for river restoration efforts if they realize also the socio-cultural benefits that are to be gained through, for example, hydromorphological restoration measures. And these benefits might include the increased potential for bathing, angling, nature experience. And all of this kind of again shows the importance of these ties to clear communication and inter and transdisciplinary processes. So here in my final slide, I would wish to emphasize that these 3 points of my talk are not solitary points, but they're actually intrinsically connected. Inter and transdisciplinary research, science communication, as well as stakeholder engagement processes must actually go hand in hand if you want to enhance best practices to address the challenge of our rivers. And I believe that if we strive to perfect these points, they will actually help us, the water community, to together solve today's challenges and preserve and restore rich and livable rivers of tomorrow. So with that, I would like to thank you for your interest, and I'm really looking forward to exchanging experiences and ideas with you.